We're back live on the second episode of season 2. Now, for some reason, your camera is doing some funny things. I don't know why.
Already?
Yeah.
It just started as well. Okay.
So it happened last time as well. I don't know whether it's because I don't know what's happening. Anyway, whilst you sort that out, let me tell you what the claim is. It's gone stuck. So there's always something wrong with your camera, isn't there?
It's always me, isn't it?
It's always you. Is it ever not you? This is the real question. We always ask what the real question is. The real question, let's come back to the topic. The real question is,
well, if not me, then who else? You know?
Okay, the real question is, the claim is this, that in contemporary times, it's more difficult to find a life partner or get married than it has been in the past. And I tell you who's made that claim. The younger generation. When I say the younger generation, these are youngsters in their 20s.
When you say youngsters, okay, 20s.
Yeah. So I have a couple of nephews who are in their late 20s. You're back live again. I have a couple of nephews who are in their late 20s, looking to get married. Yeah.
Late 20s.
Yeah.
Okay.
Does that sound late?
Yes.
Okay. Well, I got married when I was 27. Is that late?
Late.
Yeah. Anyway, their claim is that it's not easy to find somebody to marry nowadays as it has been before. Now, I don't know how they're making that comparison. Maybe we just make it look easy, our generation do.
Have they been married before?
No.
Okay.
For the first time. So they're looking for the first life partners. And
at the tender age of 27, 28.
26, 27, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Crazy, huh? What do you make of that?
Okay, so they're finding it difficult.
Yeah.
What's the difficulty? What is the protocol nowadays? How do the youngsters do it?
I'm assuming they would probably, try dating sites or social media. I don't know.
Okay, first things first, yeah. The first thing I want to come to is what you mentioned about whether it's late, early, on time, in time. Obviously, these are your nephews, and we're gonna generalize a little bit. For most people nowadays, is that the kind of age where they sort of start to look?
I don't know. I think there'll be some people who start to look a lot earlier.
Okay. And
some people who would look later. I was reading the study somewhere. According to the study, the divorce rates have actually dropped in the last 20, 30 years. In fact, even more. Last year was the lowest rate in divorce since 1971.
You want to check this year, mate? We've had lockdowns. We've had all sorts.
True.
Okay.
True. But saying that, there's a reason why people have a lower divorce rates in comparison to before, apparently, because people have taken more time before they've gotten married. So a lot more people have gone down the education route and taken more time before they've started to look for somebody to marry. So one of my nephews, he has a bachelor's degree, he has a master's degree as well. It's him who made the claim that it's more difficult to get married now than it has been before. We didn't really divulge too much into that in discussion before it got.
I'll tell you what the difficulty is.
What's the difficulty?
The difficulty is in doing as you're asked or told, not told, asked.
What do you mean?
So in our time or prior to our time, because our time wasn't that long ago, let's be honest, but prior to our time,
just a couple of decades ago,
there wasn't as much emphasis on consent. Is that the right word?
Okay, so you had less of a choice or decision.
I would say so. I would say so.
Okay.
It would fall short of forced, but it was arranged. It was definitely arranged. Your parents said, "Look, but that it's
mine
time." Didn't?
Mine wasn't arranged.
Okay.
It was semi-arranged.
Okay, but the thing is, now it's not as much. I think the mistake that we make is we leave it too open.
What, for people to make their own decisions and have
far too much. If you're going from a generation of people who kind of had it done for them, There was an arranged marriage. There was families, meeting each other, understanding, all of the rest of it. And I think the shift is too sudden. We're going from good old traditional arranged marriages, where the families are familiar, you visit each other, you kind of get to know one another. You'd know of one another anyway. Shifting to go, son, go find yourself someone. We're not going to say no.
Do you think that's actually happening more?
Oh, yeah. You don't think so?
I don't know. I think it depends on what kind of family background you have or what kind of family makeup there is at home. Like, what are the dynamics in the home? For some, it might be. For some, it might not be. Some are still quite traditional like that. I don't think everybody's gone there.
No, not everybody, but okay, who's not married? Let's look at the people in their late 20s, 30s, and so forth. They're not married because they've been left to it.
Do you think that's the actual reason? This is interesting.
Well, if we flip it and we say, okay, they're very more traditional, more sort of customary, more in line with arranged marriages and so forth, would they really be into their 30s and not have found a suitable partner or spouse?
Well, someone just said, just because the families were familiar, it doesn't mean that the couples are right for each other.
Nobody's saying they are. This is a misconception about arranged marriages, is that this family is a good family and that family is a good family. So surely two people marrying from, to connect the families or whatever should work. Not always the case.
True.
And I don't think that's how arranged marriages work. I think that's a misconception. I think the individuals are certainly considered, their likes, dislikes, habits, There
was a time when that didn't even happen. I remember a friend of mine telling me that one of his brothers back home in Pakistan, right? He was out somewhere. He came back and he just said, "Oi, right?" And there was a crowd of people at home, little crowd of people. It goes, sit down, and that's it. That's all it was. And he got married.
Well played.
It was as simple as that.
Yeah, but you see, I think it worked better because the parents at the time commanded more respect from the kids. They knew them better. They'd connected with them better. And they kind of were more able to make an informed opinion. I think now, there is differences. And I wouldn't really recommend leaving it 100% to your parents. Because let's be honest, if you're a 20-year-old or a 30-year-old, how well do your parents know you?
Do you mean now in comparison to what was the case in the past? Do you think people knew their kids better in the past than they do now?
I think so.
Why is that?
I think it was much more a time of simplicity, innocence even, We're in the age of a different kind of socializing and social aspect elements. The internet has ruined us, I'll be honest. Even though we're broadcasting on it and we're using it to our advantage.
It's like a knife, isn't it? You can use it for good stuff or you can use it for bad
stuff. So, arranged marriages probably don't work as well nowadays because the parents don't quite know your likes, dislikes, and all the rest of it.
I think that's even more difficult when someone's already been married and they've grown into another person since their parents brought them up. So they may have had a marriage in the past and that didn't work out and they retained their independence for some years. And through their experiences, they've become a different person. Their outlook on life is different. And their parent may still be stuck in the old times about, how they were in those days and this, not quite caught up with who they
this
are
is
now.
it. There's too much of a gap between one generation to the next. It's a massive leap. And you're not going to be able to carry forward all of the same customs and traditions, but at the same time, to try and completely flip it on its head and change the whole game is going to be difficult for at least one set, be it the children or be it the parents. And I don't think we're doing that great a job of finding a middle ground, predominantly speaking. Some people have nailed it. And some people, I'll be honest, there's arranged marriages happening now, which have very little input from the people who are getting married. Some of them work, some of them don't. You know? But at the same time, there's kids running off and going to uni and meeting someone and getting married, and some of them work, some of them
not
don't.
getting married, meeting people and not getting married.
Yeah, major problem nowadays.
Yeah,
it's actually an issue.
Yeah. Why do you think people don't commit? I think there's a commitment issue here.
Well,
what prevents people from making a commitment? I mean, they may go to university. They might have met somebody there, and they may have been with that person for several years, rightly or wrongly. Let's put that to a side. But if they've met someone at university, but they don't have the intention of marrying, why? Why not?
Why not?
Yeah. Why do people fear commitment?
I don't know whether they fear it. I just think they don't see the importance behind it. They don't recognize its value.
What, of commitment?
Of commitment, yeah. I mean, when you mentioned earlier about divorce rates being down, is that from how many, is that percentage wise or is that number wise? Because number wise, it would make sense. There's probably less people getting married, you know?
I didn't look at what it was. It was a brief.
So that would be interesting to know.
Yeah.
You know, that would be interesting to know.
Well, yeah, I mean, you're right, because less people are actually getting married. I mean, for the community who don't feel marriage is a part of their thing and they cohabit, what about, even then, you see a lot of people who you would assume from the offset, they're a nice person, great sense of humor, good personality and everything, good qualities, good job or whatever. But having problems finding somebody to spend their life with. Why? I mean, I just can't get it. I mean, this is not my kind of thing, but it just confuses me.
Marriage Waris.
It confuses me. I tell you what, there are a few things which have come to my mind. And one of the reasons I think people are reluctant to enter commitment is because of the repercussions and what comes along with that commitment. I mean, more legally now than before, even.
Okay.
I mean, if you think about things like back in the good old days, when I say good old days, I'm just saying back in day, you could get married to somebody and, let's just say it's a man and a woman, yeah? Getting married.
Well, I think that's how it works, anyway.
You'd be surprised, things have changed. But if a man and a woman were to get married and then that marriage didn't work, there were less repercussions on the whole makeup, like the financial side of things, as an example, than there are now. So now I think people are more conscious about, well, hang on a second. If I get married to somebody, automatically they have half of everything that I have. And if it doesn't work out, all my life saving, my hard work and everything, that's also at risk. You're adding more risk elements into, this is my risk management hat on. I can't help but think of the risk elements. So I think now people are a bit more conscious in the last couple of decades about what that means if it doesn't work out. Do you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. So if it didn't work out, it's no longer just a case of, okay, it didn't work out, children aside from the marriage, that aside, I mean, not to say that's not important, it's extremely important. I'd say more important than the money aspect. But for some people, the money aspect is extremely important, especially when they have a lot of it. So
okay, so you think it's more of almost a business decision or a financial decision?
I would say so. I would say getting married is a business decision at the same time. It's a financial decision. It's you need to think about all the other things which relate to the finance side of things. I mean, paying for marriage in itself is crippling, right? Especially nowadays with how many people are in competition with each other and, and who's going to have the bigger wedding and what's going to go on in that wedding and what kind of things are going to be a part of the wedding. Paying for a wedding is crippling financially as it is. And then if that wedding doesn't work out for whatever reason, if that marriage doesn't work out, then you've got to split half of what little you had left. Yeah, exactly. Do you see what I mean?
See, I think that's a bigger problem. The extravagance in weddings is more the reason people are holding back. In fact, that's holding people back.
Of course,
the fact that you have to raise 20, 30, even £40,000, even more perhaps. Personally, I think that puts people off and that delays people getting married more so than any other reason. I don't think people are unable to find suitable spouses as much.
I think you might be right, but I think what's happened is because of the financial elements, because of all the other stuff that goes on around it, to mitigate risk, they want to make sure that the prospect, I'm thinking sales here now again, that the prospective life partner is going to be more suited to you than less suited. Because I think in the past, you could afford to take that little bit of a risk to say, well, there's some things I don't know about this person, maybe.
Do you think
they'll be
so?
all right? I think that's a big step.
Do you think the fact that weddings were cheaper and simpler affairs made it easier to make it? No, come on.
I think there were.
In fact, the opposite. I would say the opposite. We keep saying back in the day, but obviously for those listening, they know we're referring to maybe 20, 30 years ago, 40 years ago. I think marriage then was a much bigger risk. Should we say risk? It kind of had to work. You had to make it work. There was a lot more compromise, a lot more understanding, a lot more road on it.
Yeah, I mean, just like what Yasir says, in the older generation, we knew how to compromise and had a lot more sabr, patience. Yes. Now the youngsters don't know what that is.
Not a clue. Because what have they been taught? If you like it, you like it. If you don't, you don't.
If you click a button, it arrives, and the next day.
Yeah, and if you change your mind, send it back.
Send it back. Yeah. Do you think that culture has worked as kind of?
It's gone against us massively. There's no benefit to this whole. If you change your mind, you change your mind. Try it. If it doesn't work out, it doesn't. What kind of mentality is this? Where's the benefit in this mentality?
Sadly, in the olden days, because there was a lack of choice, I think there was a lack of choice in numbers as well, because there were less people suited to your requirements, because there was less of a population. I mean, some people will only marry within certain kind of requirements, certain brotherhood, for example. Right. I still know people to this day who would not marry somebody outside their own caste.
Wow.
They just won't do it. Even now. And back then, there was less of a choice. If you're going to go down that route, there was less of a choice of how many people you had in your caste who were eligible for you. So you picked the best option you had from what was available. And if you move away from that requirement, then it's different. Then you're opening your doors to more options. But could the problem also be, I mean, back in them days, because you didn't have the choice, you had, sadly, you would even have to make it work because of izzat and, your respect in the community. Unfortunately, some people went through really tough times.
Which kind of brings me back to the point I was making earlier, that a lot more rode on it back then. Now, it's not even frowned upon, is it? To separate or divorce or anything as such. In fact, it's not even an issue.
Yeah. Do you think because there's an element of choice now, people are finding it, more of a laborious exercise to find, because I think they'll wait a little bit longer to get someone better? Do you think that could be an issue here?
Could be. I'm quite surprised, I'll be honest. I didn't realize that the youngsters nowadays are finding it difficult to find someone. Well, I assumed it was things like finances, or wanted to be in a career, or wanted to buy a house, or wanted to whatever. And I always used to question that mindset, is that, okay, you want to finish your studies, 23, 24, 25, whatever. Then you want to buy a house. So 30, or, you want to be settled in a job. So what do you really need a life partner for? So
you think because somebody is independent, they don't need a life partner?
My question is, your partner's in it for the journey.
Yeah.
And if you've pretty much completed that journey, or the bulk of it, and all the rocky road and everything is now behind you, you've got your house, you've got your £50,000 aside for the wedding, you've got your career, you're settled in your job, and you're just, well, and now to get married, and think that's the best way to do it.
Parveen says, I think it's unfair to say the new generation or nowadays there's no compromise or sabr.
No, blanket statements are always going to be a little bit unfair to some. But the levels of compromise and sabr, you, without a doubt, you can't question the elder generation or the previous generation had more of it.
Okay.
And I think the few from this generation that show those levels of, constraint and everything, they suffer, man. This is, it's a shame because it's not valued and respected as much. That one or two examples of people who will do absolutely everything that they're asked to do and bow their heads and everything. Yeah, they'll.
So one of the comments is, I understand that at the time of our grandparents, they did family marriages for the family ties to be stronger. Now most of us hate our immediate family. It's a sad fact, but we have the Western approach now, very selfish, etc. Plus now, thankfully, people don't have to have these inbred marriages.
Family marriages for family ties.
I think
there's actually nothing wrong with that. But I tell you, and I think we have to, naturally, we're going to address the subcontinent because that's where we're from. That's our roots. A lot of our listeners are going to be from there. So Pakistani, Indian, Bangladeshi, we clung to that a little bit too much. It's actually good to connect families and tribes and baradaris and castes and all of this, but we took it to the extreme, and I don't disagree with the listener there about the inbred marriages.
So Stanislava says, no, so many kids were mentally broken because people were compromising in their marriage. Those are the people who now question the old system, and that's great. I think it's a conundrum because I don't know what the those who are younger than me are thinking what kind of challenges they're actually finding. I mean, for them, one of my nephews, as an example, said that in trying to find someone, it's not like the old days, like you guys had it. I mean, I don't know what he means by that because
ask him.
I think I will because. Like I said, I think maybe we make it look easier. I think a part of this is when I think a certain generation of people who are used to living a certain type of life, when it comes to supply demand kind of thing, or even having something new in their life, it's come about in a different way, working for it in a different way. I'm not saying that's a right or wrong. I'm just saying it's different, and I think their approach to obtaining new things has to be different to the way it was approached before. Yeah, because you can't use this. There's a saying, you can't use the same thinking to solve a problem as you did to create it in the first place. Yeah. So the thinking has to change. If there's a problem with something and you've used the same thinking to get into that's landed you in that problem, that thinking needs to change. One of the most important things I've realized in any relationship, whether it's marital relationship, business relationship, or any kind of professional relationship, personal relationship, one of the issues I've found is that some people have this tendency to react all the time. They feel that they always have to respond to things, always have to, react to things. And reaction in and of itself is not very well thought through, if at all, right? Responses are thought through. People always feel that they have to respond. And one of the things I've always said is, nowadays people listen not to understand, but they listen to respond. And this is one of you're a cricketer, you've played cricket, right? We've all kind of in our young days played cricket. One of the things which I learned in cricket quite earlier on is you don't play every ball. When the bowler's bowling, you don't have to play every ball.
You've not seen me play, bro. But no, you're absolutely right.
But people feel that they have to play every ball. They have to respond or, say something in return to somebody who says something. So maybe this is where the sabr comments come in, where people feel that, the younger generation, they feel that everything needs a response.
Sabr, patience these days is often misconstrued as manipulation. You know, the youngsters these days, they think that if they listen a little bit too much and they if they take advice, or if they do bow their heads, or they, you know, if they bite their lip, they'll see it as a negative. They'll see it as a bad thing, and it can be after it gets past a certain point. But you've got to have a certain level of patience. It's not going to be,
of course,
custom built, custom made.
Yeah.
If you look at yourself as an individual, are you somebody's perfect spouse?
Yeah.
Are you custom built for that well? You know, you go around looking and thinking, not this person, not that person, this wouldn't work, that wouldn't work.
Here's an interesting one. Someone just posted about a scenario where a few of their good friends, females, have been so focused on their education that they've completed their degrees, their master's degrees, their PhDs, and have got really well-paid jobs, their own houses, and everything that you could, you know, think of materialistically. I'm paraphrasing here, and they've fulfilled everything materialistically. Yeah, they would love to get married, but they're struggling to find a suitable proposal now, or a suitable person now, because whilst they were on this journey, they rejected proposals, and obviously those people have now moved on, and these guys have now missed out on that. I think there's this misconception that because you're on that journey, a marriage would be a distraction. That's one of the things I've kind of found to be, if anything, it should make you stronger. If you're in a marriage whilst you're studying, it gives you a why, doesn't it?
Well, look back to our parents and grandparents, and before that even, they'd get married at 16, 17, 18, 19, right? And they would learn together, they would grow together. Anything and everything they achieved, it would be together. They'd have each other's back. They'd hold each other's hand. If you're getting married in your 30s and you're settled and you're done with life and you're just taking home that salary in that paid holiday, it's not the same. You're not. You'll grow old together from 30 or 35 onwards, but really, will you grow together?
Maybe not grow together. Maybe you don't have to. Maybe you don't have to grow together. I mean, you could have different outlooks slightly on life. I think as long as your basic values are the same, you could be going in different directions in terms of what you learn, on how you grow, but still be good for each other.
It's the glue. I think that's quite important.
Yeah, but that's what I mean. That's the glue. The glue has to be something other than having to go in the same direction in terms of certain types of growth. There are certain types of growth which are fundamental to grow old together.
Yeah,
but the values have to meet for those kinds of growth. You
can't, or you shouldn't plan to get that far in life or to such a stage in life before you consider marriage or a spouse, because a lot of it is done by then. You've developed as a person, you've gone through your struggles. You'll always look back at your struggles. I've not met a person till date who doesn't now and again recall on their struggles. Now, if you had a spouse or a partner to be with you through those and supported you through that, there is no stronger bond, you know?
Yeah, but how does that support come about? It might not look like the support that you think it looks like. It might be still support, but in a different way. Imagine you're married and your wife may not know, as an example, a man's married. His wife may not know exactly what business he does, doesn't know the ins and outs of business, doesn't really understand and doesn't want to understand how that business works, doesn't need to.
Yeah.
But she, in order to make sure he's thriving and growing, she's making sure that the family's looked after, the kids are fed, clothed, going to school and all that. I'm just saying, I'm not saying that's the woman's role.
Or vice versa, but the point is everybody's playing their position.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it works. It's like you mentioned about cricket. You know, the bowler has his role to play. Now, the wicketkeeper obviously will wait their turn, the batsman, the fielders. Everybody plays their position. And there's a reason for that. And that's why it works.
So what's the answer to people like Sarah, who's posted about these females who have studied for so long, missed out on those proposals, and then now can't find somebody.
My opinion?
Say it. I think I know what you're going to say.
Okay, so they've got their masters and PhDs and whatever, and they've got a good job, and they've got everything, materialistically speaking. Yeah. Do you know what their problem is now? Is that they've raised the bar so high that they would not marry a pizza delivery driver, or somebody who works in a factory, or somebody who had a different challenge in his life. Somebody who was the eldest son and had to drop out of college in order to help provide for the family, and he wasn't able to go to university and everything and do the same stuff. They wouldn't consider someone like that because they consider him beneath them. This
is true. I mean, I'm not saying it's true for everybody,
No.
but there is a certain level of expectation now.
Yeah.
And you would not, the average person who has gone through those struggles but saying that, there are exceptions. I know from within my own family, my sister's a solicitor, one of the country's top clinical negligence solicitors. She married somebody from back home, not very well educated. There was a connection, related. There was a connection, and he's actually disabled, and got married to him, and she got married in her 30s.
Okay.
Right, and came over. Mashallah, they live a very happy life together. He's obviously done what he can to progress, and he has his own business in courier driving and stuff like that now. But he's done what he can. And that's something they found to be compatible for each other.
Yeah.
So there are exceptions to the rule, but generally speaking, I see where you're coming from. I think there are the bar would be raised.
Look, if you've got and the listener, give you a couple of lines of, look, this is their situation. Okay. They're in their 30s, they've achieved everything, they've got money to play with and whatever, and now they can't find anyone. Surely somebody who's made it into their 30s and not got married in that time, the only way that you're describing them is the fact that they've got money and material things.
Yeah.
But does that tell you a little bit about the mindset?
Not necessarily.
Surely there's another way to describe that person.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's just describing a scenario. I think Sarah just put another comment, said, but why should women lower their standards because men can't raise the bar themselves and do well for themselves? I think it's unfair to say that women are too educated or successful. Men then just need to step up more. And I don't really buy that because
I don't think anybody buys that.
No,
anymore.
because if this person is who's gone down this route of becoming educated and rejected proposals based on the fact that they want to become more educated and want to do well in business and whatever, then they've rejected them proposals.
Yes.
I think, yes, there may not be the right type, in inverted commas, or number of people available for that individual then going from the future, because a lot of them will have eventually found someone. Then you're on this race to go to a certain destination. You're going to naturally expect less people up there.
Yes.
Yeah. Because if you want to excel in something to that degree, you're going to expect less people up there.
Of course.
And you're going to have to, if you made your bed, you've got to lie in it.
Boom. No, it's true.
No,
it's not about raising the bar. When we say raising the bar, or why can't independent, high-earning women, do this and that? Yeah, they can. And it's the same for men. Do what you got to do. But don't think just because you earn an 80K salary or whatever, that anybody on a lesser wage or a lesser job or had lesser opportunity than you is not worthy and should raise the bar. Then it is a business transaction. Then look at it financially, from a business point of view. Then, don't worry about what you're missing out on that connection, on that
FOMO.
chemistry.
We talked about FOMO.
Yes, exactly. Then don't look for somebody that you can connect with and all the rest of it. If your criteria starts off with money and salaries and material things, then so be it.
So someone says they will even marry the pizza driver pizza delivery driver, no problem, but they won't take his BS. No disrespect, but 70% of men, oh, we're going to statistics now. Someone says 70% of men think they are more entitled to the earth space. It's not about their progress, it's about respect. Most men cannot deliver this. As for women who can't see beyond the job status, his intelligence, integrity, then they studied whilst asleep in the classes.
Tell me something,
Okay,
Mike.
that's interesting.
So 70% of men are whatever, yeah? Disrespectful, not worthy. Which leaves how many?
30%.
30%.
So if you've got 30% of men who are eligible,
30% of men in the world are how many?
I don't know, but it's a lot less than 100%.
Yeah.
And even
Is
70%.
it more than one?
Of course.
Yeah. So, you know, all this, all men are this and all men are that. There's answers to stuff like that as well.
Someone said, I also think one of the reasons why women are in their 30s plus going on dating apps, there are a lot of players and the guys with some commitment issues, hence why we still single. It's not easy finding a genuine, honest man. I think, you know what, that goes both ways, because I think there needs to be a balance here. Men doing that kind of thing is wrong, but women blaming majority of the men as wrongdoers is also wrong. Because if there's also a presupposition in your mind about men in general, then you're gonna face a lot of obstacles on the way, and there's a lack of trust there as well. I think that needs to be addressed. Sarah says education isn't for money for all. It's using their brains and what they're capable of doing and pushing themselves to the best they can be. In certain cultures, people finish their education, then consider proposals. This is the issue.
Nothing wrong with that. I tell you what the issue is. It's not to do with education as such. Look, we have a prime example here, yeah? You have an example within your family. Did you say lawyer or solicitor? Yeah. High level stuff. Found somebody that she's compatible with. Yeah. That's enough to make life work. The fact is he's ambitious. He ticks a lot of boxes. Unfortunately, whether he grew up in a different part of the world or he didn't have the same opportunities available to him, shouldn't go against him. And, you know, your family member did the absolute right thing. Looked at all the boxes that were ticked, they worked. And the thing is, he still continues on his journey. He's still progressing with whatever opportunity he gets. He takes a step forward and a leap forward, and he's still climbing that mountain. And they're on that journey together. It's a beautiful thing.
You know what? I love this comment Nashila has put then, because this is exactly my thoughts on this. Everyone will have a different viewpoint based on their values. A person's adab, manners and willingness to commit is more important than their financial job status. A conflict occurs when there is a huge gap in their values. Yes. I agree.
Yeah.
And this is probably hitting the nail on the head for me. And I think as you mentioned, the example of my sister and as Sarah's mentioned about some of these ladies who have gone so far forwards in progressing and missed out on proposals, I think then the standards need to match their values, not their financial status. I think everybody would love to be in a financially secure position and not have to be relied upon or a burden on anyone. You know, those are, you know, tick boxes to have, like, good to have.
Yes.
But as somebody who's seriously looking for someone to spend their life with, then the value system has to be compatible. And if those values aren't compatible, then naturally there's going to be conflict.
Yes.
And that will then lead on to disagreements. But then the etiquettes of disagreeing are also breached in a lot of people because they don't even know how to disagree without throwing a big strop and threatening to divorce.
And I tell you, truthfully speaking, I don't know why we're discussing education and wealth and material stuff so much, but seeing as we're on the subject, it's not often men who have issues with women's income, earnings, social standing, job, career. Yeah? On the other hand, women will pretty much always bring it up. And we're witness to that here.
Bring what up?
This whole thing of, oh yeah, but he's not as educated. Yeah, but he doesn't earn as much. But he's this, but he's that, you know?
So Shireen says, if the hat fits though, there is a general breakdown of the family unit. Change happens from within our community. If quite possibly the men that broke it. It's quite possibly the men who broke it. And it's quite possibly the women who will have to fix it, starting with their son. Okay. Okay.
It's a little specific, and I'm not saying it's not true.
I think there is an element of truth in that, but I think to make blanket statements like that,
there's single parents on both sides.
Yeah, there are.
There's single fathers raising kids, there's single mothers raising kids, and they all have their own struggles. Is one side more outspoken and more discussed and more kind of, in the limelight, in the attention? Yeah, but let's not be silly about it. There is the same thing happening on both sides.
Yeah, and I think Shireen has a point in terms of from our culture. When I say our culture, the Indo-Pak region, there happens to have been more influence of how these kind of things have developed by the men within the household. We can't deny that. Largely by men, not all, largely. That's changing. The dynamics within the household are changing. And that's affecting how the children are now looking at potential proposals going forward. When you mentioned that, don't give them completely free rein. And some elements of arrangement within the marriage or arranged marriage is still a good thing. I think that's had an effect because people, second, third generation, will have seen how the first generation came across, what they did. If they didn't agree with it, they'll have done something differently with their kids, rightly or wrongly. Whether their assessment has been correct or not is different. But the fact that they felt that it needed to be changed, they've changed certain things.
Okay, so coming back to where we started, what's a good age for marriage? Look, there'll be people who missed the boat. There'll be people who, had other issues, other challenges. I get it. It's never too late. I just want to, put that out there. 30s, 40s, 50s, it doesn't matter. But in an ideal situation, somebody who's growing up as a teenager or whatever, and we're to advise them, what's a realistic sort of...
I'd say early 20s.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, if you've gone and wanted to get focused on a degree, even 21, 22, I think straight after that, get married. Personally, I think early 20s, even late teens, if you're not going to university, get married as soon as you can.
Yeah. Personally,
that's my personal opinion. With hindsight, it's a wonderful thing is hindsight. I wish I had got married earlier because I enjoy my married life. And, I also believe in predestination and everything. Some things are just not meant to be, but we will have control over what we do at the same time. I've got sons. I would be advising them to get married as quickly as possible. Yeah.
Yes. Okay. See, I often think about this question and I think people will say a number, but they're not sure why they're saying that number. What's the reason? If you're saying you should get married at 25, why not at 23? What's the difference? What's happening? Tell me what's going to be in those 2 years.
I think most people feel that some people still need to mature to become of marriageable age. Is that the word, marriageable?
It is now.
It is now. Marital age. Yes. I think that's the word, isn't it? I think some people feel that they have to mature into that role. Some people feel that their child is still a child at the age of 25.
Is that going to change though?
No, I don't think it's going to change from the parents' perspective. I think the parents have to be a bit more on the ball with things. They have to think beyond this is my child. This is a young man.
As a parent or as, an elder or whoever, sitting back and waiting for your child to mature. No, I don't see it. Look,
I tell you
nothing changes.
I tell you where the problem is. I tell you what I really despise is when some people feel that in order to help their child mature, they've got to get them married. That is an issue.
Yeah.
And I despise the people who feel they've got the right to ruin someone's daughter's life.
Someone else's life, yeah.
Because their own little twit couldn't.
Ladla.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's
and
true.
that pisses me off. Ultimately, we have to respect other people as well as our own children, their own wishes.
Yeah.
Why would you even put that proposal forward, knowing your own little idiot is going around pissing about?
You've really got it in for
No,
this.
honestly, man. I really
agree with you. I agree with you.
I have sisters.
Yeah.
I have a daughter.
Yeah.
This kind of thing really affects me.
Yes.
It really does.
Just the thought of the boy's side, knowing he's irresponsible, knowing he's not reliable or anything, but saying, no, we'll get him married. And once he's got a wife and maybe a kid and maybe there's a bit of responsibility on his shoulders. Don't do that.
Yeah.
Do not do that.
He's going to, this is the problem. He's going to become worse because he's going to say, well, I'm married now. I've got a license to go out and do my own thing now. Yeah,
it is an issue. It is an issue. But I think marriage it's always going to be different. There's no right or wrong answer. The question is, what should you be doing in order to get yourself ready for marriage?
This is a good question. And I think this is one of the most fundamental questions. Yeah. I keep saying this in pretty much every episode of Veda's video, right? But the what it comes down to is identifying who you are as an individual, finding yourself. If you can't understand who you are, what your values are, what your purpose is, what your passions are, you can't define, at least maybe not wholly define, because it's always going to be an ongoing journey. Things might change. But if you don't put in the effort to at least understand yourself, how the hell are you going to be spending life with someone who you're going to try and understand to spend the life with? Someone else.
This is it, yeah.
How do you know what's going to be good in your relationship and what's not? What do you know? How do you know what you're even looking for? If you don't even know who you are, what do you know? How do you know what's going to be good and bad for you? The moment you understand yourself, the moment you go through that effort of finding yourself, establishing your values, you decide, you establish what your perimeters are. You establish what your boundaries are. You establish where the flexibility is. Only then can you try and understand what kind of person is going to be more compatible with you than less compatible. It's always going to be an element of risk there because the other person may not have done the same. But the least you can do is ask them to do the same. Go and get some coaching classes from somebody and trying to find out who you are and establish yourself. Because, there's I think it's in Malaysia, they actually have marriage courses which are mandatory before you obtain a license to get married.
Wow.
The fiqh of marriage.
Fantastic.
And so apparently their divorce rate is a lot lower than other nations. But what I'm trying to say is they go through at least some form of finding of what their roles are within marriage, And I think we need to do something similar. Within school, they don't teach you this kind of stuff. I mean, they teach you all the other stuff, but everything seems to be swaying away from the traditional marital relationships. Everything else is explained and, dare I say, even promoted. But when it comes to the traditional marital setup, it's left on the shelf and it's not even talked about. I mean, even our own mosque, I think we have ourselves to blame here, our madaris and our masjids. When you look at from a theist's point of view, whether it's a church, a synagogue, I don't know what kind of issues people face within other communities. But from our community, we have a lot of work to do. We need to help educate our sons, our daughters to understand what their roles and responsibilities are as responsible citizens, responsible people, responsible Muslims. All that thing has to come into the mix. It's not all about secular education, which is fantastic. It's great. But that's only going to get you so far as an individual. It's not going to help you find contentment in life necessarily. You might be content with parts of what you've achieved, but taking a holistic approach overall in your life, it's a completely different ballgame. Everything needs to be looked at. Sorry, did I just go off on one?
No, I absolutely agree. I think that's you've pretty much wrapped it up, and that's so true.
Well, Shireen says Ladla effect, exactly. The other problem we have with early marriage is maturity levels are different for the different sexes. I personally think guys should get married younger, but then I don't believe it's the right thing for girls to marry younger. Houston, we have a problem. You know what? Some people like older women. So if guys
have to be the same age.
So well, if a younger guy gets married to an older woman, it might just work. So people like that kind of thing. I think Houston has solved the problem.
Would it not be the other way around, if anything? If we're looking at maturity levels,
usually you find women are more mature.
I think so.
Yeah. But I don't think getting married earlier for a bloke is going to mature them necessarily. It might help if you're already that way inclined.
Yeah, if you're getting married in order to find maturity and learn responsibility, may go.
It depends. It depends. If you're already that way inclined and you're looking to find that part of your life, then that's fine. If you're not, if you're the other way around and you want to go and have some fun, then that's not going to help. Now, Sheila says often people put their expectations of happiness onto their spouses. My biggest lesson has been to deal with emotional baggage rather than projecting it onto the other people and expecting them to make you happy. That's a very interesting point. And Sheila's an NLP practitioner. She's a trainer as well. So, I didn't expect anything less from her. It's a thought-provoking statement there.
No, it's true. It's true. I think you've got to go into marriage with the right mindset and the right intentions. And if you're not happy going into it, and like you say, you mentioned baggage and carrying a lot into it, and you can't just go and dump it on the other person and expect them to fix it. It's a new chapter for them also.
Sure. And this is the problem. A lot of the times, people find that they're only in it for themselves. No, the YIIFM factor. What's in it for me? Seldom do we see people who live for others. This is why whenever I talk about values, purpose, and passions, our purpose is for others, our passions are for ourselves. The moment we understand from within our values how to have a more fulfilling life, and it's all going to be subjective. Some people may not feel that way. For me, I feel our purpose is for others. Our passions are for ourselves, but you don't neglect your passions just over your purpose because you upset the equilibrium. The balance is not there on the scales.
Mm-hmm.
But within the confinements of the boundaries that you've set or the values that you've set. Because if you're not following a life or living a life according to any particular kind of value system, you're just surviving.
Mm. Do you think marriage is going later and later?
What, in age?
In age.
Yeah, I think one study said that it is because people are more prone to looking into becoming educated and investing their time in education rather than marriage until they've educated themselves. So they feel that they'll go for education before they go for marriage. And that's that's particularly, apparently, let me rephrase that. Apparently, that's one of the reasons why there are less divorce numbers now, or rates, I should say. I don't even know whether the percentages or numbers. The divorces dropped because more people are becoming more conscious of how to make a decision and a bit more risk averse in inverted commas.
Interesting. I just think the problem now is it's too optional. Getting married is optional. Doing this is optional. Looking after your parents
is that the problem?
Optional.
Everything, we have too many options?
Of course.
Everything's an option.
Everything is an option. Nursing homes are full, care homes are full, clubs are full. There's something wrong here, isn't it?
Masjids are empty.
Masjids are empty.
Yeah.
Because it's an option.
Yeah.
Oh, Mara Puttarina, he studies, he does this, he's got a job, he can't do this and he can't do that. And
yeah.
Yeah.
He'll stop praying when he's got everything.
Yeah.
He needs to be thankful.
It's an issue, isn't it?
It is. It is an issue.
If it wasn't broken, it didn't need a fix. Yeah. And, our elders and our previous generations, they weren't perfect. There was elements of culture that contradict maybe our faith and other things, but they had a lot of things down to a T. Everybody kind of knew what role they played and they just used to fit. Nowadays, men and women don't fit because the women are too busy trying to be men and the men are, I don't even know what men are trying to be these days. It's so mumbo jumbo.
Oh dear. That's a real controversial statement to make.
There's going to be somebody that stands up and says, no, that's not me. I agree. It's probably not you. But tell me there isn't a lot of confusion out there. Tell me that the lines haven't crossed over and it's not all wishy-washy now. Right, great. Women are, getting better education, better jobs and stuff. That's fantastic.
people have become too fussy and with too many demands, as Rubina says.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Demands are an issue.
I think demands are an issue. And even now, unfortunately, you still have people who, when they're ready to get married or they've decided this is going to be my life partner, there are demands from certain sides that we want this for the marriage, we want that. There are those types of demands as well.
Yeah.
Or one side of the partner will say, well, if we want to get married, these are going to be my demands. Reasonable demands are always welcomed.
Yeah,
I think it's unreasonable demands which sometimes can be found to be crippling.
And there are a lot of unreasonable demands nowadays. Problem is, how often do they not come out until after marriage? Until that honeymoon period wears off. You know? If you're so focused on having an amazing wedding, it just means you're distracted from having an amazing marriage. You know? There's too much emphasis on the wedding affair itself.
Than the marriage.
That's
a good point.
I think as a youngster growing up, how much do you stress about, being right for someone and adapting to them and, communicating with them and understanding them and compromising and all the rest of it? Yeah, there's a little bit of that, but predominantly, I'm going to have these cars, I've got to have this hall, I've got to have this, got to have that, I've got to have this photographer.
Because they had this, we've got to get that now.
Yeah.
And this is why they say there's more barakah in simplicity. Simple nikahs.
Yeah, it's so true. I think if we could move away from flashing the cash and doing it for the Insta, we could get back to focusing on the essence of marriage and marital relations.
So Parveen says nothing is a set way anymore. Men, women roles, not a set age for marriage, but choice options shouldn't be seen as bad. No, they're not bad.
What does that mean?
No,
that there's not a set way. When we're talking about men and women, what are we saying here? That there's not a set way?
That's a good question. I think that's going to be subjective. It depends on what you're.
But it's true. I don't disagree. I agree that is what's actually happening nowadays. My question is, why? You have a breadwinner, you have a homemaker, everything works. Now, it doesn't matter which is which. I'm not going to say the women have to stay at home and make rotis and stuff, but if that's your role, then do that role. If it's not, then it's not. It was agreed beforehand that the woman would carry on with her career and whatever, and her husband would be the homemaker or the house husband or whatever. But don't chop and change in halfway into a marriage or whatever, or both be trying to do the same thing. I think that's the problem for these youngsters nowadays.
I think it comes back to having that establish the rules and the values at the beginning. Now, if you live by according to a set value system, or rules that you've decided between yourselves, then you're on the same page. But if you've not done that, you're not going to be on that same page.
You're not going to, and you're not even trying to be.
And that's when the conflict occurs. But again, I'll say this again. There's nothing wrong with having minor conflicts. I think a lot of misunderstandings or mishaps happen, but it's how you manage them which also makes a massive difference in the success of any relationship. Like I said, as a cricketer, as a batsman, you don't play every ball. Some you just leave. You don't go for slogging every time sixes unless you're Ali.
It is what it is.
You don't play every ball. The problem is we have a lot of people who feel that, if he's going to do that, I'm going to do this back. You know what I mean? Or if she's going to say this or do that, I'm going to do this back. There's become somewhat of a competition as well. And that's not healthy. You compete in good things. You know what I mean? If you can bring the best out of each other, some couples do. Whether if they share a career, for example, Nashila shares a career with her husband, they do, life coaching and NLP stuff. They both do it. But if they can help each other, compete with each other, it's a healthy competition. Ultimately, you're both winners.
That's it.
But if you're not in that space, then you've got to do what works best for both of you. And sometimes that means you've got to be you have to let go of stuff. But here's the important thing. Here's the important thing also. There is a way out if it's definitely not working. And there's another way in somewhere else. Opportunities can come at another time. I mean, we're coming close to, we've finished an hour. On a final note, because a relationship doesn't work out doesn't mean that's the end of the road.
Yeah.
There are options, and you need to explore those options.
Yeah, it's a chapter, isn't it? It's a chapter.
Some options people don't want to think about. They feel there's not the right option for them. Fine, but there are options. Even in this, from a relationship perspective, dynamics of different relationships. Your relationship or your family setup is an example as well. That's an option, but it's an option which can make people genuinely happy. But not everybody is inclined that way, which is fine. Nothing wrong with that.
There's no one rule that's going to work for everyone, is it? I think the only thing that absolutely has to be, is to be forthcoming. You have to be honest, and you have to admit, this is what I want. Great if I can get it. Not a problem if I can't.
But that also comes...
This is what I need.
Yes.
Yeah? Now, once you're able to lay those cards on the table...
It's not even that simple. I mean, that simple, Ali. I mean, sometimes things are okay to have, good to have, must have.
Yeah.
Doesn't matter if I have.
Yeah.
There are different categories, but you have to physically make sure you've gone through that process to establish what they are in the first place. Because if you can't do that for the sake of a marriage, this is a decision which is going to be affecting you for the rest of your life.
Oh yeah.
Then when are you going to do that? If you can't do that for yourself before you get married, then when are you going to do that? That's what I would encourage everybody to think about before they get married. And even if it means like you're making somewhat of a mechanical decision, there has to be some rationale behind. People say we often buy on emotion and justify with logic. But in this situation, you have to think about the logical side of things. It's all about a bit of give and take, as Rabina says. Pavin says, well, everyone's version of view of perfect will be different, of course, and you have to establish what that is. And there are options, Sonali. There are always options. You just got to explore those options. And if someone's had a marital breakup, whatever it might be, if you let other people's views affect your life, then you've let them affect your life. That's the bottom line. Ultimately, it's you who makes the decision. How much of other people's views are you going to let affect your life is solely down to you.
I think the other thing is that ruins people's lives is not laying their cards on the table.
Yeah.
For youngsters, I think it is difficult, especially with the generation that their parents come from and everything else. It's difficult for them to say, look, I need this in a life partner. I need this and I need this, and this is a must, and this I can't let go of. Once you can lay these things down on the table, and you can discuss it with your prospect, or whatever you want to call it, your potential, and that can be done two ways.
Yeah,
you're getting somewhere.
Of course.
That's the only way, or that's the only time that I would say use your business skills or negotiation skills. And that's important.
If you don't have business or negotiation skills, I mean, I train senior council leaders on influencing, negotiation, and sales skills. That aside, a lot of this is very similar in terms of the skills you require to to negotiate things. A lot of it is similar. If you need any help,
well, if you can't openly say what you want from a marriage, what you need from it, then can you really cry afterwards when it doesn't work out?
It's not, in some people's minds, it's not as simple as that. They need to be coached into the right way of thinking, in that it is okay to say something. Some fear the repercussions of making, so there's always, this cultural thing, if a girl, I've come across some cultures, in some families where, they will say, what they don't realize is, look at the way the prophetic marriage happened in the first marriage. The proposal was sent to the Prophet by Khadija radiallahu anha. But we don't think that way. We think of the cultural side. We could continue forever on this. We're way past the hour mark. But thank you everyone for contributing. Next week's topic, by the way, is going to be, some might think it's a controversial topic, but it's going to be one worth definitely joining in for. in order to introduce the next topic, all I will say is Allahu Akbar.